Hello, my friends. With the extended response project coming up, I thought it might be useful to you guys if I gave you a little video to help you out. So we're going to be focusing on the Help Herbie Become a Better Student extended response in this video. All right. So your assignment, should you choose to defeat the evil zero that would come in your grade if you didn't do it, is to help out with Herbie wanting to be a better student. And thanks to your study of behaviorism and your memory and knowledge of memory techniques, Georgia Cyber Academy has decided that it's you who needs to make a presentation for a group of 8th grade students who are going to be coming to high school next year. So we're going to imagine that you are somehow working with Herbie's 8th grade homeroom about memory techniques using behavioral learning like conditioning or social cognitive theory, and how to overcome forgetting, how to just basically be a rock star student here at GCA. So this is what your project is going to be about. And you get to share this information in the way that suits you best. Are you a PowerPoint presentation kind of person? Do you like to make flyers? Do you want to make a video? Hey, why not a TED Talk for Herbie? Think about just how would you want this information explained to you? I mean, think about it. Imagine someone comes into your homeroom and starts talking to you about being a better student. If it's all black and white and they're just talking to you like this, you're kind of like, right? So think about kind of trying to make it more interesting, something eye-catching. What would get them thinking or working? All right, so the type of information that you can include. This is all about learning from a behavioral view. So you want to include memory tips, how to prevent forgetting perhaps, how conditioning could or social cognitive theory could help. And basically you're looking for tips that would relate to the material in Module 5. And again, present that information in an interesting way. Some people have made songs to sing about it, and you don't have to sing the song. If you wanted to, though, if you were to sing it, I would totally give you extra points for doing that. But I know some people prefer to just write the song lyrics and leave the singing up to others. So let's talk about how we're going to get that short-term memory into long-term memory. The first thing we could bring up is chunking, organizing our information into familiar and manageable units. So for example, we know with telephone numbers, you have your area code, that's your first chunk, the first 3 numbers are your second chunk, and then your last 4 numbers are your third chunk. All right. So what you want to do is rather than trying to tackle all that information you have to study at once, how could you break it down into pieces? And that might be something you want to recommend. Maybe they study over a period of time. Maybe they color code their information, depending on what would work best for them. Another thing, remember that concept of rehearsal. We need to move that information from short-term memory to long-term memory by repetition. So you could talk about finding different ways to interact with the material. Maybe first you read it, and then you watch a video on it, and then you take a quiz about it. That's repetition. That's rehearsal. It can be as simple as just repeating it over and over to yourself to remember the information. Behaviorism is only external and doesn't use internal motivations. Behaviorism is only external and doesn't use internal motivations. So you can do something like that. And of course, mnemonic devices, any type of device or trick to help yourself remember information. Like the whole concept of Roy G. Biv, not a real person, that's all the colors in the rainbow. Or my very excellent mother just served us noodles, or if you're a traditionalist, pasta. Because you would want to add in Pluto, but that's a whole other story, right? But you can remember these and they can help you remember the order of the planets. Another thing you can talk about, context and sensory clues. Context is when you link the information you've learned to location. For example, telling someone to study in the same spot they're going to take the test. I mean, that doesn't work for the end of course exams, of course, but if you're taking a test for, I don't know, let's say psychology class, and while you're taking that test, you study at the desk that you're going to take the test, that's really going to help you to do better. Or cues, sensory cues. You can use sensory links to information. And you might recommend, for example, draw little pictures next to your information so that you'll think of the pictures and remember it. Or you might burn a candle to link a smell. I probably mentioned this in class, but sometimes when I don't really want to grade papers, I know that sounds crazy, I have my chocolate candle and it makes me happy. So I burn my candle, and then now when I'm not feeling motivated, I can just take a sniff of the candle. I don't even really have to burn it unless I want to, because I've already linked that to grading. Hey, I think I need to grade some papers. I'll be right back. No, I'm just kidding. The other thing you could do, chew some mint gum when you study and then chew it again when you test. Whatever mental state you're in, whatever sensory cue you're using when you study, use that same sensory cue when you're testing. So that might be an option for the end of course test if they let you chew gum, which is a whole other story, right? How about our little friend here? It looks like this guy's had a little too much caffeine, right? Well, if you drink lots of caffeine when you study, guess what? You need to drink lots of caffeine before you test. Because if your brain is all hyper and caffeinated while you're studying, and then you go to take the test and you're not hyper and caffeinated, your brain's not in the same place. So it's not going to remember the information quite as well. All right, I'm going to give you a list. Ready? Take a look at it, read it, memorize it. All right, I've covered it up. How much do you remember? It's probably butter on there, right? Eggs, maybe dog food, I think was on the list. We find that when we look at a list, we tend to remember the beginning of the list and then the end of the list second, and then third is middle of the list. So generally people are like great at the beginning, and then they're like, I can't remember what was in the middle. And then they get to the end and they might remember some more of it. And this is what's called the Regency primacy effect, where we don't so much remember the middle, we kind of remember the ends. So what about when you're studying? Well, if there's something that you're really struggling to remember, put it at the top of your list. Let it be the first thing. If there's something else that you're trying to remember, maybe put it at the end. Let your middle be things you feel pretty confident about. All right. So now we could think about how learning happens in operant conditioning. And we have Sheldon trying to get Darth Vader out of his spot. It's important to think about that whole concept of positive and negative in behaviorism. Operant conditioning says positive means to apply a stimulus, negative means to withhold a stimulus. And we could think about, if we're studying, we could use things like positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement, perhaps if you study for a certain period of time, you give yourself a break to play on social media for 10 minutes. Negative reinforcement. So perhaps you take something away that you don't like. So I had a friend who used to wear this sweater that she hated, and it was itchy. And when she studied, she wore the sweater. And when she got it all right, she got to take the sweater off. Kind of reminds you of another Big Bang Theory episode. But that's something else that you could look at, or you might be able to say, okay, my mom won't bug me if I get my studying done. So that's negative reinforcement. You might need to use punishment. Maybe you don't get your work done on time. You look at the end of the week, you go, oh, I missed some assignments. I don't get my phone back till those assignments are done. And again, you can get into the whole positive and negative. But that's a way you could use operant conditioning to help yourself be a better student. Now, social cognitive theory can be really useful. We talk about the concept of inactive learning, which is all about we learn by doing and experiencing the consequences of your actions, which is really important. But what about, excuse me, vicarious learning? Click, there we go. Vicarious learning is all about learning from someone else. What if you've got someone around you who's a good student and they're studying the same thing you are? Maybe you can work with them, or maybe you can plan to have study sessions, even if you're working independently, where you're with them and they stay motivated. That pushes you to be more motivated. You could even come up with rewards and punishments together. So you could talk about how study buddies can help you to become better students as well. That's a great idea, is to kind of pair up. And as we remember, we can model and imitate others. So we might be able to kind of watch their habits and become better students based on that. And of course, then we can look at our conduct and say, okay, are we matching where they are? How do we do that? So here's the deal, guys. You can pick any of these tips. I mean, I just gave you a whole bunch of tips. Don't worry about that Unit 3 thing. Just ignore that. But I just gave you all these tips, and you only need to pick 5. 5 that you want to share with Herbie and his gang and make them better students. So I gave you a lot more than 5 so that you can pick and choose whatever sounds best to you. And so your job is to make that assignment, a PowerPoint, a video, a flyer, a brochure, however you want to do it, go for it. You know, some people like to put like tip 1, let's say rewards if you perform well on tests. That's tip 1, and they talk about what are some rewards you could do. Next slide, mnemonics. What are mnemonics? Here are some you could use. So you can do things like that. You can even look up memes that kind of go along with some of it because, you know, everybody loves memes. You could make colorful fonts. You can make this interesting. Basically, what I'm not looking for is a black and white essay. Just something that shows that you're trying to aim it at this group of 8th grade students. So again, we've talked before when we did the children's book about point of view and about considering your audience. So that's all you're really looking to do is just, you know, you were in 8th grade once. What would have interested you? So think about that. And, you know, maybe what would have interested you is pyrotechnics and you're not really sure how to bring that in. I got you. I'm just saying try, okay? Not try the pyrotechnics. I don't want to be responsible for that, but try to make it interesting. All right, and of course you can submit it in module 5.11. I believe it's H. I forgot the letter, but it's in the towards the end of the module. So if you have any questions, please let me know. I have great confidence that you can do this, my friends.